You believe you are rational, that your choices follow logic, that your thoughts are your own, that your life is, in some quiet way, under control. But if that were true, why do you keep doing the very things that hurt you? Why do you stay where you know you shouldn't? Why do you say things you regret the moment they leave your mouth? Why do you destroy what you secretly want to protect? You are not a rational person, and somewhere deep inside, you already know it. There is a moment, small and almost invisible, that repeats itself in your life. It happens when you hesitate before sending a message, when you replay a conversation long after it ends, when you choose silence instead of honesty. You tell yourself you are being careful, thoughtful, strategic. But if you look closely, you will notice something unsettling. You are not trying to improve the outcome. You are trying to avoid something else, something darker. Dostoevsky understood this long before you did, not as an observer, but as a participant. He lived inside contradiction. A man who stood before a firing squad, who felt the final seconds of life pressing against his chest, only to be spared at the last moment. A man who later chained himself to gambling tables, losing everything again and again, as if he were trying to recreate that same unbearable tension. He did not believe in your idea of rationality. He believed in something far more disturbing, that human beings will choose suffering over peace, chaos over clarity, destruction over happiness, simply to prove they are free. And you are no exception. There is a version of you that knows exactly what would make your life better. Wake earlier, speak honestly, leave what drains you, commit to what matters. It is not a mystery. You have already solved the equation. And yet, you hesitate. Not because you don't understand, but because understanding is not the problem. The problem is that you do not want the solution.
This is where the underground man begins to whisper. Not as a character, but as a voice you recognize. The voice that tells you, quietly but persistently, that being predictable is unbearable, that living according to logic feels like a kind of death. But if everything could be reduced to reason, to cause and effect, then what would remain of you? You resist clarity not because it is difficult, but because it threatens something essential, your chaos. There is a strange comfort in contradiction, in saying you want love, but pushing it away when it comes too close, in claiming you want success, but delaying the work until it becomes impossible, in dreaming of change, but clinging to the very patterns that keep you stuck. It is not accidental. It is deliberate. You sabotage yourself not in spite of your desires, but because of them. Think of the last time you ruined something good. Not dramatically, not in a way that could be easily explained, but subtly. A message left unanswered, a tone slightly colder than necessary, a delay that stretched just long enough to create distance. You told yourself it didn't matter, but it did, and you knew it would. There is a peculiar satisfaction in these moments, a quiet, almost imperceptible sense of control. Because if you destroy something yourself, then you are not at the mercy of losing it. You choose the ending. You become the cause. And that, in some twisted way, feels like power. Dostoevsky saw this clearly. The underground man insists on acting against his own interests, not because he is confused, but because he refuses to be predictable. He would rather suffer than become a machine that follows logic. And you, though you may not admit it, share this refusal. You do not want a life that is perfectly rational. You want a life that is yours, even if that means ruining it. There is an inner dialogue that plays inside you, often unnoticed. One voice is calm, reasonable, almost clinical. It explains what you should do, how you should act, what the consequences will be. It is precise, logical, convincing. The other voice is quieter but heavier. It does not argue. It resists. It hesitates. It creates doubt where there should be none. It says, "Not now." It says, "Maybe later." It says, "What if this is wrong?" And you listen to it, not because it makes sense, but because it feels like you. This is the paradox. You trust what feels authentic, even when it leads you away from what is good. You follow the path that aligns with your internal state, even when that state is confused, fragmented, contradictory. You call this honesty, but it is something else. It is submission. You are not choosing freely. You are obeying something within you that you do not fully understand. And sometimes, that something wants you to fail. There is a hidden desire in you, one you rarely acknowledge, a desire to suffer. Not in the dramatic sense, not as a conscious wish, but as a subtle pull toward difficulty, toward complication, toward emotional intensity. Peace feels empty. Stability feels dull. But suffering feels alive. Think about how often you revisit painful memories, how you replay conversations that hurt you, how you imagine scenarios where things go wrong. You tell yourself you are analyzing, processing, learning. But there is something else happening. You are feeding something. Dostoevsky knew this appetite well. He did not see suffering as something humans merely endure. He saw it as something they seek. Because suffering confirms existence. It gives weight to your life. It proves that you are not numb, not passive, not insignificant. Pain becomes evidence. Evidence that you are real. And so you create it. In relationships, this becomes almost ritualistic. You find yourself drawn to people who complicate your emotions, who are distant, inconsistent, difficult to read. You tell yourself it is chemistry, connection, something deeper. But it is tension. And tension feels meaningful. You are less interested in peace than you are in intensity. A calm relationship feels suspicious. You begin to search for flaws, to test boundaries, to introduce uncertainty. Not because you want to destroy it, but because you cannot trust something that does not challenge you. You equate difficulty with depth, and so you create difficulty. This is not rational, but it is human. There is also the matter of control. You say you want control over your life, your emotions, your future. But control, when it becomes absolute, removes something essential: uncertainty. And without uncertainty, there is no risk. Without risk, there is no thrill. Without thrill, there is no sense of being alive. So you loosen your grip. Not consciously, not deliberately, but subtly. You procrastinate. You delay decisions. You leave things unresolved. You create pockets of chaos. Because somewhere inside, you need them. The underground man would understand this perfectly. He rejects the idea of a perfectly ordered life because it leaves no room for rebellion. And rebellion, for him, is the only proof of freedom. You do the same. Every time you act against your own best interest, you are not just making a mistake. You are asserting something. I am not a system.
I am not predictable. I am not controlled. But in doing so, you become controlled by something else, your need to resist. There is a moment when you realize this, briefly, when you see your own patterns with uncomfortable clarity, when you recognize that you are repeating the same cycles, making the same choices, ending up in the same places. And for a second, you feel something close to clarity. You could change this. You could break the pattern. You could choose differently. But then something strange happens. You hesitate. Because change is not just about improvement. It is about loss. If you stop being the person who sabotages, who overthinks, who hesitates, then who are you?
Your identity is not just built on what you want. It is built on how you fail. And letting go of that feels like losing yourself. This is why rationality is not enough, because rationality asks you to optimize your life. But you are not trying to optimize your life. You are trying to preserve your sense of self, even if that self is flawed, contradictory, and self-destructive. Dostoevsky did not offer solutions to this. He did not believe in clean resolutions or simple transformations. He believed in confrontation, in looking directly at the parts of yourself you would rather ignore. And what you find there is not comforting. You find pride in your suffering. You find attachment to your pain. You find a strange loyalty to the very things that hold you back. And worst of all, you find that you are not entirely willing to let them go, because they are yours. There is a quiet tragedy in this. Not the kind that announces itself, but the kind that unfolds slowly, almost invisibly. A life shaped not by external forces, but by internal contradictions. You could have done differently. You could have chosen differently. But you didn't. Not because you couldn't, but because you wouldn't. And that is the part that is hardest to accept. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a participant in your own undoing. This does not mean you are broken. It does not mean you are beyond change. But it does mean that the obstacle is not outside you. It is within. And it is not passive. It is active, deliberate, persistent. It will argue against your progress. It will justify your hesitation. It will convince you that delay is wisdom, that avoidance is caution, that self-sabotage is self-protection. And you will believe it, because it speaks in your voice. There is no easy resolution to this, no moment where everything becomes clear and simple, because clarity itself can be resisted. You can understand everything and still do nothing. You can see your own patterns and still repeat them. You can know exactly what is wrong and still choose not to fix it. This is the final contradiction. You are capable of reason, but you are not governed by it. You are aware, but you are not obedient to your awareness. You are free, and that freedom includes the ability to act against yourself. So the question is not whether you are rational. You are not. The question is what you will do with that truth. Will you continue to disguise your contradictions as complexity? Will you keep calling your patterns just the way you are? Will you protect the very habits that quietly dismantle your life? Or will you look at yourself, fully, honestly, without excuses, and admit something far more uncomfortable? That the chaos you live in is not accidental. That the suffering you carry is not entirely imposed. That the person standing in your way has always been you. And if that is true, if even a part of it is true, then what does it say about the choices you will make tomorrow? Not the choices you should make, not the ones you understand, but the ones you will actually choose. And more importantly, why?